Good morning, Madison.
Good morning, Lindsay. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm so fantastic. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. So, for those of you who are listening, I'm here with Madison White, who is a guide and a healer with the Modern Mystery School, which is the same school that I study with and practice with. Madison, so happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you reached out to have this conversation. You have a lot of really wonderful conversations. I see them in the online community, and I'm happy to chat with you and have a conversation and see what happens, see what flows.
Beautiful. So, Madison, I know we talked about exploring this topic of life activation, which is the healing modality, for those of you listening, that both Madison and I use as the foundation, the sort of first step in the healing process that we work with. And yet, like, I don't know about you, but if someone's like, do you want a life activation? I would be like, what the heck is that? What does that even mean? I've never heard of such a thing. You want to what? What exactly?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I would love for us to spend some time to just explore what is this and what are the benefits? How does it work? And I guess my first question for you, Madison, is your personal experience with life activation. Like, tell me about how did you come to find it? What happened for you? How did it go for you?
Yeah. So when I was first offered the life activation, I also had that reaction of like, I don't know what the heck that is. But the immediate thought that followed that was, I 100% need that. I don't know what it is, but I definitely need whatever that is. And I had was in a place in my life where I think a lot of people are more and more, where they have an understanding that there's something greater beyond just this physical reality, right? There's something to life beyond just like the pay taxes and die thing, right? They're not just here to go to your job, and there's something more beyond that. And maybe they've explored religion and they don't really feel that it's quite there. Maybe they've explored a little spirituality or psychotherapy and they don't really feel like it's quite there. But also I had this intuitive sense that there was like a golden thread of truth or similarity that was sort of woven between all of these different things. Like, I studied some world religions just on my own when I was in college, and you start to see some of the similarities in the stories, and you start to, I did some traveling in which different countries and saw that the human experience, although in many different shades and hues and contexts and colors, was all very much similar. So I had this internal knowing. I don't even think I was aware of it at the time, but that there was something universal about the human experience that could be brought to a higher dimension or could be brought to a higher level existence. And there seemed to be some people who were somehow able to reach that a little bit more easier than others. I love the work that Brene Brown does, for example, who talks about some people have that just resilience to find the heart and soul of difficult experiences and move through that. So then the sciencey part of my brain was like, well, what is the formula that is applied, right? There's got to be some sort of formula process or activation that must be applied for that to come, right? For that to come online. And when I heard life activation, something about the energy of that, something about the healer and guide who offered that to me, and the energy that they were holding, right? Because they had achieved some level of peace and clarity and unique self-expression within their life that I was feeling, and like, ooh, I want that, which we can also talk about as the authenticity piece that I find that's so beautiful about the mystery school work. Um, so when I heard that being offered, I just immediately jumped at it and said yes. And come to find out, as it was revealed as I walked the path, and now these many years later, that it really is that life activation really is the thing that activates that higher dimension of existence within each individual person. And the results and what happens when someone, experiences or receives a life activation, there are some, across the board results that I can speak to, such as having more hope in your life, having just a more positive mindset, easier time letting go of negative things. But the application of that, like what more hope looks like in your life, what having a more positive mindset looks in your life, what having more confidence or easier time letting go in your life, like what that looks like in an individual's life is going to be unique to that individual. And to me, as a healer and a guide, like that's the most exciting part, is when someone comes in and they're like, yeah, life is okay. Maybe I've checked a bunch of boxes and I've done the thing that society said that if I did this, I would be happy or successful. And I've done these things and I still feel like there's something missing. And then we do the life activation, maybe you do full spirit activation, empower thyself initiation, however much they feel that they would like to receive. And then their life changes. They change. And all I did was just provide the opportunity, right, by receiving life activation to open this energy within oneself. And then what they do out in their life is really what determines how much and in what way they change. Because I also really liked that there was a lot of personal empowerment and self-agency that comes with this work that I think people feel really out of control. They don't feel in control of their lives. They don't feel in control of their emotions. They don't feel in control of their thoughts. And when you're not in control, of course, you're not navigating your ship. So you wake up in the morning, you don't know how your day is going to go. You start a new job, you don't know what it's going to be like. You start a relationship, you're not really sure who you are or who this other person is. And when we reestablish that personal empowerment and agency and self-mastery, then you really become the captain of your ship. You start to sit in the driver's seat of your life. And when you sit in the driver's seat in your life, you can actually start then like navigating the road trip of your life and what you want that to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, Madison, as you're speaking, this theme of empowerment is so central to our lineage and to the way that the light flows through and impacts a person's life. And I know that when I started this path, I grappled a lot with this idea of, okay, if this is a path of empowerment, then why do I need a life activation? Why do I need an initiation? And this balance between receiving and allowing something to be done to me versus my own personal agency and choice. And I feel like I've resolved that now, but I'm sure that some people who might be listening to this might also be thinking well, if this is about personal empowerment, why can't I just do it myself? Why do I need your help, Madison, or your help, Lindsay? So I'm curious, at least in regards to the life activation, what is your perspective on that? On why would someone need someone else's help in order to achieve this mastery and this empowerment?
That's a great question, and I love that question. So when people, oftentimes when people ask that question of, because we'll say, okay, all the answers are within, right? All the answers are within yourself. All the power that you need is within yourself. Well, the question that I then ask myself is okay, well, where then? Where within? Where
is this supposed to be? How do I find this?
It's okay, yeah, I'm totally powered. And it's well, okay, so you're able to make all the money that you want in the world. All your relationships are super fulfilling. You totally love yourself. Every thought that you have is positivity. Nothing that anybody ever says triggers you. It's okay, cool. So when you have that, I'll sign up for your school. And I'll come train with you. But in the meantime, and I love this conversation also because it forces us to sort of look, I don't like to get too caught up in semantics, but it is interesting to look at this because, for example, I came from a life previous to mystery school where I was seeking a lot of specifically feminine empowerment and what feminine empowerment looked like and what it meant to be an empowered woman. And I think that this applies not only to just woman empowerment, but in empowerment in all aspects, because it speaks to the human experience that we're living in right now, in this time in history, and have been for the last thousands of years, is we base everything on our physical experience. And what we learn in the mystery school, specifically in the Empower Thyself class, is that the physical reality that we're experiencing is really only like 10% of the true reality that is available to us at all the time. 90% of it is energy, is energetically based. And so when you're framing your life based on, if you've got this whole masterpiece and you're basing all of your decisions on this one little corner of it, right? Is that true? Is that true empowerment? You're not seeing the full picture. You're not getting you don't have all of the resources. You don't have your full awareness. You're not getting all of the input needed to have a clear output, if that makes sense. So when we open the doors of these activations, and I also like to remind people that, as you said, this is a lineage. This is a thousands and thousands of year old lineage. This isn't something that I made up. This isn't something that you made up, right? This is something that, and again, my sciencey brain loves this because this is something that has been tried and tested for thousands of years and was developed for the purpose of activating that greater spiritual awareness within an individual so that they can live a fuller life, live life alive, as we say. So by activating that spiritual piece of that energetic piece of the human experience, that's how you start to see the bigger picture of who am I? What's going on here? What is this life thing that we're doing? What am I in relation to this, both the experience that's happening here, the experience that's happening above, as above, so below. How do I relate to all that? Where's my place in this whole thing? And what is my purpose? And how can I best utilize this relatively very short life that I have been graced with, that I also signed up for, that I also said yes to. Maybe I didn't read the fine print, but
I'm like, yes. The footnotes? Was there something missing from this contract? It was hard.
Cool. Great. I'll go be like, I'm sorry, what? Until we get here and we're like, oh, way more lessons. But again, finding that, we can get caught up in that drama, but, as, we go back to that empowerment piece and you really tapping into just how powerful we are and our ability to become stronger than whatever it is, right? When you think of it in terms of energy and who, and, when, as you progress on the path and you receive, Empower Thyself initiation, life activation, Empower Thyself initiation, maybe you take Kabbalah, maybe you receive some healing sessions and you start to really awaken the true power and potential for goodness that we innately have and are. You start to step into the driver's seat and really realize that it's like, oh yes, I can handle these things. Oh yes, I can face myself and overcome myself and whatever is in front of me. And then even higher than that, shift it into a gratitude of, I'm so grateful that I'm being shown this thing that has kept me small or in illusionment or disillusionment, excuse me, or in some sort of program that was keeping me down. And now I see it. Now I see for what it is. And now with that awareness, I can make a different choice.
Yeah. Exactly. It reminds me of I think it's an Einstein quote, that you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. And in fact, I've been observing this in a lot of dynamics, like talking to a friend the other day who's really grappling with trying to move beyond this issue that she has around finances and work. And it's like, I can see she's doing a lot of things. She's working hard. She's trying really hard. And yet it's like, without that shift in consciousness, without that shift in perspective, you're always operating from the same level that the problem's at. And you can never really like advance to the next level. You can't really progress through the issue until there's greater consciousness. And I think that, first of all, I have so much compassion for where people are at, because everyone is trying to do the best that they can from what they can see at that time. And I think of like, I live in New York, and the homeless people on the streets who or the people who go around and they're collecting cans to try to make like 10 cents a can. And you think, okay, logically, from my perspective, like, why would you do that? Why would you spend 2 hours collecting 100 cans to make like $3? But from where they're at that time, they probably can't see beyond the limitation of their circumstance and the limitation of their perspective. And so, of like, why do we need to receive a life activation? Why do we need to receive the light? It's like, it's this flow of both. We have to make that decision for ourselves. Like, you have to first decide, I want to know who I am. I want to be empowered. I'm ready to receive a deeper level of truth and ease and joy in my life. And you make yourself worthy of receiving that expanded experience. But with that, there's also the interplay of like, what do you need to receive in order to then move forward and progress? And the life activation is a tool. I'm not going to say it's the only tool, but it is an amazing tool, as you and I both know, that allows someone who has already chosen themselves to expand. It is the tool that then comes in that moment to allow the light to enter in, to allow for that expansion that person has already chosen, but they didn't have the way to do it yet.
Correct. That's why we say that the core of all light work is choice.
Yes.
It always comes down to choice. Because oftentimes there's also another quote, I don't know if I'm going to be able to recite it correctly, but it's kind of like, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And the fact is that our society and our world, the program matrix, if you want to call it, that we were brought up in, completely negates the existence of spirit entirely, and magic and all of that. So from a very young age, we are taught that magic isn't real. Spirit is, if you were brought up in a religion, you probably had some or in a spiritual philosophical practice. It was brought up in that way. The issue with some of it is very beautiful. Oftentimes you come up against dogma, or it has to fit in a certain way. And if that doesn't completely align with you, then it can feel like you don't have a place. You don't have a place in it. Or if you have any sense at all that there is something beyond this world, more than what we can just sense with our 5 physical senses, but the world doesn't allow for that, again, you feel like, oh, there isn't a place for me. Or I have to shift and shape and mold myself in order to make myself fit into some place in this society, wherever I can get myself to just fit into that, which is a lot of what I was experiencing. And ended up kind of compartmentalizing myself, which I think people do a lot. It's like, okay, I'll be this type of me here, I'll be this type of me here, I'll be this type of me here. And we think, okay, this is great. I'm able to express all the different parts of myself in all these different areas. And we think that that's okay. Maybe it is for a period of time, but separating yourself feels damaging to the soul and damaging to the spirit, because when the spirit wants to come in and fill, transmute through the soul to fill your physical vessel, but you've separated into all these different areas, right? You never feel whole. You'll never feel like a whole you. You'll never accept all of you because you've separated yourself, and then you deny others the opportunity to accept all of you as well, because you're separating yourself into these different areas. And again, it's not really any one particular person's fault per se. However, we have collectively as a society so far agreed that we accept this, that we accept the world as it is. I think that's changing. I think more and more people are waking up and being like, I don't. And that's wonderful, because that's their purpose. That's their purpose, is to shift it, right?
Yes.
To find the personal empowerment to shift the way that the world is. And a major piece of that shift is going to be incorporating spirit back into the way that we live, back into the way that we live our lives. Because like I said, it is 90% of our experience is a spiritual experience, and only 10% is physical. So when we bring more of that spirituality, more of that energy, and recognition of energy and how it flows, and instead of trying to make the world match us, maybe humbling ourselves and seeing that there is a tremendous scientific precision to the universe and the way energy flows. And it has been flowing in a very precise way since the beginning of time. We study that. We study that like scientists and learn that flow of energy, and as above, so below, learn how to recreate that within the physical world, aka bring heaven to earth. Learn the way that energy flows naturally, learn from the universe, be students of the universe and the energy of the universe, and then learn how to apply that in ourselves. And that's that's one of the things that the mystery school path teaches you, is it's a metaphysical, alchemical, hermetic path that teaches you the science of magic and the precision of how it works, so that you can apply it to your life and become a magician, become the master of the spirit of your life. Because like you said, like Einstein said, we can't solve the human problems from the level of human. Have to solve the human problems from the level of spirit. When we learn, it's like learning from a parent. Ooh, there's a bubble.
We like that. That was a good one. Yes, level of spirit to solve the problem.
Air element. So when we can learn from spirit and apply that to the physical, that's when we raise the vibration, we raise the collective to this higher place, and that's when we can experience more peace in the world, less of this, and more collaboration, more coming together, and solve a lot of our major world problems when we're collectively operating from this higher dimension of awareness of ourselves as spirit primarily, and physical second, or even third.
Yeah, 15.
You can't negate it, right? We can't negate it. Some spiritual practices will just try to transcend the physical existence altogether. Can't do that either. You can't deny reality, but you can have a bigger picture and reassess those ratios.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that's actually something that I love so much about this lineage and this work, is the marriage and like the unification between the spirit and the physical, and the integration between those pieces. Because I know for me, prior to finding mystery school and prior to the life activation and this whole path, I was very deep into mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhism, and I can't speak for anyone else's experience, but I can say for myself, while those practices really deeply connected me, like they helped me attune to the present moment and begin to sense and perceive these places of blockage and pain that I had not been able to contact before because I was just too avoidant and not slowing down enough to feel them. But I also started to sort of take myself at a distance from my life. It was almost like I was observing myself from a different plane. And I would be biking down the street in Somerville, where I used to live in Boston, and it'd be like, oh, if a car hit me, okay, that's just another experience. It's just a sensation. It's just a passing experience. And there was a way that I was kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater by being in retrospect, like spiritually bypassed, and being on the one hand so present and aware of what I was experiencing, but so detached from my experience. And I didn't know, like, what's the balance between being like a total hedon and just completely, in the flesh and totally hedonistic versus being this like pure spiritual being of light who's like doesn't touch any of that messy human stuff. And I just didn't see a path forward that would bring those things together. And I remember, Madison, when I received the life activation, I felt this like channel of light moving down my chakra system, moving down like the central core of my body. And I could literally feel this opening of all of the centers of my being starting to flow as one. And it was as though suddenly, like, that disconnect between my spiritual essence and my physical essence just like resolved itself. It just I started to understand in an embodied way, it is possible to experience those high levels of spiritual bliss and ecstasy like in my physical body. And I don't have to be meditating 20 hours a day, and I don't have to be on ayahuasca, and I don't have to be like, I don't know, like a monk living on top of a mountain, because literally that's what I thought I might do. I was like, if that's what it takes, like, I'll do it. But something inside me said there's a different way, there is a different path. And that's when this path became available to me. And I love that because, yeah, like I haven't found other systems or other models of spiritual progression that so beautifully marry the two together.
Yeah. And I love that you use the word marriage, because it really is a holy marriage of the spiritual and the physical. And what you have in a marriage is that something greater, a third entity is born.
Yes.
Something greater is born of the two. And yes, there's just speaking objectively, there's plenty of paths. There's plenty of spiritual paths. What I personally have found is that a lot of the paths outside the mystery school will master one aspect of sort of spirituality. Like, this is really good for this, or this is really good for this, or this is really good for this. But what makes the path unique is it really does, as you said, combine all of these different elements together into one, because we are all of it, right? It's the whole shebang. It's the whole experience. It's the whole macrocosm expressed in the microcosm. And, I could go a little bit into the history of King Solomon, where that came from, but I would suggest anybody who's curious about how this happened is to attend an Empower Thyself class. Because I tell you, once you know where it comes from and everything, like, you're going to be like, okay, I want, give me the rituals now. Like, I want it. But I really have to think again, the reason, because some people, when I tell them, what the path offers and what it does, there's a little bit of a too good to be true. There's a too good to be true feeling. And that's good, because I know that this person is wise. This person is yes, they know. And I always follow that up with, you're not going to get all of that from one session. Life activation is wonderful, and it is the first step, because it is going to increase the amount of light available in your physical DNA, and that is going to create huge ripple effects in your life. But it's a step.
Yeah.
right? And you receive that step, and then you're ready for the next step, and you're ready for the next step. And people will kind of say, well, how much should I do? How far should I go? And I'm like, that is entirely up to you. That is
Yeah.
entirely up to you. And there is only ever one step, and that's the next
Mhm.
step. I learned that from Martina. Thank you, Martina. There's only ever the next step. Which just lends to another reason why, and we talked a little bit about this on the phone yesterday, is the reason why the path is structured the way that it is structured
Mm.
is I've had clients come to me who have had Kundalini awakenings, or they go on these, ayahuasca experience, and they're essentially psychically, astrally, spiritually blown open with this experience and no framework for how to apply it. I remember I had that experience when I did DMT,
Mm.
and I woke up the next morning and was just for hours, just sat there like, because it was like, okay, like that was real. And now I have to go to work. You know what I mean? And it was like, I have no idea what just happened. I have
Yeah.
no idea how to process this. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
And so to blow open those psychic senses in that way without a foundation or a cradle or a support system to land on, is jarring and is disruptive and can be very disruptive to your life. And it's like, okay, and we talked about yesterday, like coming into the school, I was very much anti-authority, very much anti-structure. In the wisdom that I've gained since that, I've realized that the anti-authority and the anti-structure that I was against was the fact that the authority that was imposed and the structure that was imposed wasn't in my highest good.
Right.
It wasn't for the purpose of developing my spirit and my soul and allowing me to come into my greater knowing of myself and greater self-expression. It wasn't built for that purpose. But then when you find a structure that truly is created for that purpose, an authority that is really for the purpose of giving you safety and giving you a bedtime, you know what I mean? To bring it back to, like, children really need that. They strive in structure, but structure with the intention of creating more freedom, growth, the safety to do so, just enough leeway to let you push out of your comfort zone, but not fall off completely, but push outside of your comfort zone to experience what you can do, push you out of the nest just a little bit to let you. And that's why the path is so highly structured, or even within the sessions, life activation is a very thorough, involved session. There's many steps, and they're in a very specific sequence. And you and I go and we get trained and recertified on a yearly basis to make sure that our own personal ego isn't getting in the way. People say, like, oh, why do you have to get recertified in like a spiritual energy thing? And it's like, I mean, I do it because I honor the lineage and I honor the teachers who have come before me, because I have benefited so massively from this work. But I also do it for my clients because I recognize that I'm not perfect and I have a negative ego and I have to keep that in check. You know? I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
And that's part of that, is having the humility of, like, yes, I want to go and I want to receive and I want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. And I haven't somehow convinced myself that, the order is this way, or actually do it that way, or what have you, because I know that I'm humble enough to know that what I have received from thousands of years of trial and application and learning and testing and receiving and growing, evolving, is going to be more beneficial to what my 35 years of life and experience can provide.
Mm.
So I am very grateful for that structure. Sometimes I see this meme where it's like when you're like 15 and you're like, don't tell me what to do. And all of a sudden you're in the 30s, you're like, please, for the love of everything, tell me what to do.
What do I do?
Foods do I eat? How much should I sleep? Should I take supplements? Should I do acupuncture? Please help me. Mom, how do I cook chicken?
Yes, yes. Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Madison, it's as you're saying that, I think back to before I started doing mystery school work, I struggled so much with doubting myself and questioning. And I feel like I was always kind of looking for someone to guide me. And I remember I had one friend in particular who is not a mystery school practitioner, but she's a shaman and a healer and trained in metaphysics in a different lineage. And when I met her, I was like, wow, like she was so intuitive and so tapped in from what I could see at the time. And I would just like glorify people like her and be like, what should I do? Like, help me connect to what I know. And I just was always looking for something outside of me to give me that kind of direction. And the ironic thing I found, because I, like you, have resisted the structure, I've resisted the kind of what can seem like almost formulaic or rigid at times. I've resisted that in the school. And yet, now looking back, compared to where I was before I started, I'm actually so much more in tune to my inner knowing and my inner truth. And I feel so like I am truly guiding my life from my truest essence. And I'm no longer looking for that external validation or structure. And yet I needed that structure to bring the light in to keep me moving in the direction of my own empowerment. And it might seem like a bit of a paradox that in order to be able to guide myself and be my own, gain mastery of myself, I actually have gained the humility that I do need mentorship. I do need to receive from others. I do need to be held in a structure that supports me in moving in that direction. Because the times that I have left the path and kind of gone and tried to do it on my own, I would just follow my intuition. But the thing is, like, when you're just following your own intuition, how are you ever going to move beyond your own blind spots?
Right.
Like, you need a structure or a system that supports you in moving towards and actually addressing and working through those blind spots. And it's not possible to do that by yourself, not as far as I can see.
As far as I can see, no. And again, if anybody figures it out, you let me know because I will be in your class tomorrow. But yeah, it's you can't know what you don't know. And that's, like I said, a lot of times what draw people to this type of work because it feels so outside the norm. Even though spirituality is in New Age is becoming more mainstream, this is still very different from that.
Yes.
Mainly because of the highly structuredness. A lot of the dogma within the New Age spirituality movement is that, yeah, everything is intuitive and just go with the flow. And as long as you have the right intention, but clearly that's not true.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people who are applying that who are stuck in the same cycles for years and years and years, or maybe make little shifts, but they're very small, so clearly it's not just that. And again, I'll go back to you. We can use the example of a greatest teacher, which is God, nature, and the universe, which is highly structured. Our bodies and the way that our cells multiply. And you look at plants, you look at photosynthesis, you look at the solar system. Everything about the way that God, nature, and the universe flows is highly systematic. It's highly, highly systematic. And why would we think that we are separate from that? How could we think that we are different than God, nature, and the universe? How could we possibly? Everything is included in that, including us. And the other piece with that of us being included in this highly structured flow, because remember, structure enhances flow. That is the purpose of structure. And I love, also coming from an artist, considering myself an artistic person and an artist, is you look at the artistic process, and much of the artistic process is choosing something over something else. Like if you're a choreographer, you're like, okay, of all the moves that I can do in this 4 count,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this one.
Yeah.
And that's creating art. And you're a painter. You say, of all the colors that exist in the entire stratosphere, I'm going to choose this one, right? That's structure. That is
Mm.
structure. That is making a choice of choosing this over the other. Because if you just put all the colors, just be brown or black.
Brown mess.
Maybe you want to call that art. If you want to do that, I can't live your life for you, but great. But a lot of the paintings that you stand before and just go, wow, right? It's because of their choice of color, their choice of hue, their choice of light, their choice of what they are going to paint. I'm going to paint this flower instead of this flower, right? Or if you just got up there and just, kind of whatever, like, okay, it's kind of chaotic, but you choose specific movements for a specific reason, right? So that's structure, that's applying structure, that's cutting out other and choosing one, which is another form of what structure is. So we're highly structured, and it enhances flow. And there was another thing about structure that I wanted to talk about that I now don't remember. So
Yeah. Well, when I sense into this topic, which, as I've said, I've had a lot of resistance to structure myself, it also feels related to like not having clear discernment of being able to say like, this is this and this is this. And how I feel like in a lot of new age and more liberal communities these days, there's a lot of just like, we are all one, or like, it's all light, it's all good. And then you're like, well, but where does that take us? Like, that doesn't take us anywhere. Like, how do I know whether to go left or right? Or like, what is left and right? Or is left and right the same thing? It's just all
Right.
one thing. And I know
Right.
that for me, I would just get lost in the sauce. Like, I would just be kind of lost in spiraling around. And one of the things that one of our teachers at the school, Sovereign Ipsis Miss Dave, says is like, this is not a field, this is a path. And a path means you can be on the path or you can be off the path. And I can sure as hell tell you that I have been off the path many times in my life. And there's the kind of rebellious part of me that be like, who are you to tell me I'm off the path? Who are you to say that there is a direction? But then, like, if there's no direction, then how do we actually move forward out of where we are?
Right.
There's no way to move forward if there's not that ability to discern and to make distinct choices, and then to learn through our, progressively to learn through our experience to gain that wisdom to create greater discernment. Because even when you're talking about a painter, like, or an artist, like the most skilled artist has excellent discernment in that arena. Like, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's like that sort of sense of, oh, what would add the most beauty? What would bring this alive? What would create this certain kind of effect? And that's a distinct choice, which also comes back ultimately to our sense of empowerment and to feel like the words I use have an impact. The way that I do my hair has an impact. The way that I keep my space matters. And to just say, oh, it's all fine, like, just accept everything as it is, and it's all God's plan, or it's all good, it totally throws that out. And it's sort of, in a way, it negates the power that we have and the agency that we have to understand, like, we are creators of this reality. And it really is up to us what kind of reality we are molding. And we are molding that in every single moment, in the thoughts that we think, in the choices that we make. And we have to also be willing to take responsibility for the fact that those choices have an impact, and that impact is not going to all be equal. And it's not about like shaming ourselves or condemning ourselves, judging ourselves for being sloppy or for saying something that was rude. It's not about judging, but it's about, okay, how can I let the judgment go and still keep the discernment, which I think is often missing in a lot of new age communities.
It is. It is. And I can almost feel sort of like the collective as you're talking, being like, okay, well, okay, discern like right and wrong, but also like be in the flow, but also like no shame, but also like right. And like the monkey mind starts going. It's like, well, how do I do? I just want to do what's right. Like, how do I
Mm.
know? And I don't know. And yeah, everything is beautiful. And it's like, yes, 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 yes. A lot of times we get caught up um, discernment. We get caught up in the we kind of make it a battle, right? Of like
Yeah.
right and wrong, good and bad, right? And we can get so hyper fixated on that, or also we can get hyper fixated on what is the truth. I'm looking for my truth. I want my higher truth. What is my truth? What's your truth, right?
Yeah.
And it is this kind of like black and white that creates this black and white dichotomy where when you hyper fixate on that, it's really easy to get that monkey brain going and be like, I don't know which one. And again, we have to raise ourselves
Yeah.
out of that, see the higher perspective. And the best way that I know to do that is through, so we have to increase the flow of light into your physical body, into your mind through activation, full spirit activation, empower thyself initiation. So you can start to actually see the bigger picture and realize that. And it also goes back to that marriage of the physical and the spiritual, of understanding and like not just intellectually knowing or like, oh, this is a cool thing to say, but really feeling down in your bones and really knowing in the core of your being that we are spiritual beings having a physical existence for the purpose of remembering that we are spiritual beings.
Right. Yeah.
And not getting so caught and drawn into the this, that, or the other, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's true, what's false. Just knowing who you are and knowing that that is changing. It is always going to be changing. And what is right for you in one moment may not be right for you in the next moment.
Mm.
But that you are a continuously evolving
Yeah.
being, and to be connected with your eternity, your spirit, your eternity, while also connected with who you are as a physical being, right? Like you cannot deny or ignore the physicality, but that
Mm.
when you bring spirit into physical, instead of trying to make the physical fit into the spiritual,
Mm.
bring the spiritual down into the physical experience, is when you can, again, it's that 90%. Like 90% of reality is way more than what most people are aware of. Most people are aware of, and that's that 10% we talked about physical reality. That's someone who's operating like on all cylinders.
Uh-huh.
Like they're really
Yeah.
awake and aware, and their physical body is healthy, and they're working on their stuff. Right? That's like top capacity of negating, even still negating spiritual. So when we opening that up is when we really start to come from that higher perspective and awareness of the self as an eternal spiritual being who has never been born and therefore will never die, as Founder
Mhm.
Goody says. And then from that place, with those blinders off, now look at true reality. Now have discernment from
Mm.
higher perspective, and not get caught in like, ooh, well, what mm.
Yeah.
Come from your higher place. And it becomes a lot more simple. It's very, very, very simple. Life is actually very, very, very simple. And one of the things that I've loved, that I've learned on my healing journey, is that sometimes it's not so much about people get really obsessed and hyper fixated on what's wrong with
Mhm.
them, right? Because we have so much in our society telling us what's wrong physically, what's wrong mentally. I mean, people create whole identities over what they think is wrong with them. And in that process of hyperfixating on what you think is wrong, you stop the flow of what is right and good and beautiful and light. So when you start to let go of those things that stop that flow of what is good and beautiful and right within yourself, you stop joy, you stop mental clarity, you stop peace, emotional stability, right? You stop all those things, because all of that is just creating drama and separation within yourself from your higher self. So instead, let go of things that you think are wrong with you and embrace that you are good. You are good at your core. You are a good and true and light-filled being. That is your blueprint. That is the framework of who you are. Take off the stuff that is other and let yourself be good and worthy and joyful and embrace your beauty and the individuality of that, and get curious and explore what it is and how it expresses your goodness. Is focus on the goodness, and it's dying to come forward. It's dying to come forward. And when we let go of that emotional, a lot of times emotional baggage or mental programming like that, like just flush it. Just let it go. Let it go. I mean, you can spend time psychoanalyzing if you want, but that's just tightening the grip.
Yeah.
The grip of it. You can't ignore it. This isn't spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
I'm very much will say right now that there's a lot of things in our world that cause very serious trauma and wounding. Clearly, because we need this very intricate, highly structured, many-year-long path to let go of it. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because it definitely exists. What I'm saying is that maybe focusing on the problem just leads to more problems.
Yeah.
And maybe focusing on the true solution, on the solution, will lead to solutions. You know?
Yeah. Yes. And one of the things I'm sensing into as you're speaking, Madison, is again bring it back to the life activation and why these tools are so important, because until you have a taste of the light, and you have some, even if it's just like a flicker, and that's all you get, is like, oh, this is what the light feels like. This is what it's like to live with a little bit more light in my life, in my body, in my mind. Like, then you have some kind of guidepost to start to understand, like, oh, these negative thoughts I have about myself, or this pain I'm carrying around, the story that I'm telling myself, that doesn't match this flame I now have awakened inside of me. And until you have that illumination as an internal reference point, it becomes very difficult to know, to really see these darker patterns for what they are, and to choose to let them go. Because like you say, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are therapists or who work very deeply in the sort of psychological realm, and there is some level of understanding our shit that can come from that, but it doesn't truly allow it to like dissipate, because until you bring that spiritual energy in, until you bring that light in, you're still kind of stuck in the garbage pile, like shuffling things around, reorganizing them, composting them, but like you're not truly alchemically transforming it into something else, because again, you're still working within the confines of your own mind. And I think that humility and that openness to spirit, to something so much bigger than us that we are also part of, to allow that to come into us and to do the work for us, and to say, I open myself and I humble myself to receive something so much bigger than me, to relieve me of that which I'm carrying. And that doesn't come purely from psychological work.
Right.
That only comes through spiritual work.
Right. Right. Psychological work definitely has its place. I think that there's definitely something to understanding our minds and our thoughts and where they come from. But again, just because you have a label or an understanding like, oh, I know I feel this way because my mom said this to me and my mom was a alcoholic, narcissistic, whatever. No, mom, you're not actually not. And then I know that. But for example, but everyone's got their problems. Okay, I know that. That doesn't mean I don't still have those problems, right?
Yeah.
Just because I have a label for it now doesn't mean that or I see it from many different perspectives. Again, sometimes that can become just holding on to it even tighter and then becoming like, oh, I'm this way because of my mom.
Yeah.
And then it's done. And then you just accept that. Or it goes even a step further. And then you start creating coping mechanisms to keep that wounding in place.
Mm.
That's what I'm a big anti-coping mechanism person. It can work to an extent, but
Yeah.
after a while, like if you've really told yourself the truth of this is an issue in my life, this is a pattern in my life, and then you maintain a coping mechanism to keep it intact, you're then choosing it. You're
Yeah.
choosing to keep it. You're creating a habitat for it to stay. And you're like, this is how I'm going to alter my life in order to maintain this wounding or this programming and this trauma instead of just letting it go. And that's where the spirit has to come in, because that is incredibly letting go of a belief system can feel like dying. It can feel threatening to your life because it has become the fabric of your reality.
Mm.
It has become the way that you experience life. And if you were to have a thread pulled from your fabric of reality, what's going to happen? The whole thing's going to come unwoven. And
Mhm.
all of your identity and who you think you are and your belief system, the way you think the world is, the way that you relate to others, all of that could come undone. Terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Everything that you've built up to keep yourself safe in your mind, which
Yeah.
also, side note, that's not the mind's job. The mind, you are not your mind. The mind is a tool that figures out problems. Your mind is a problem solver. You are spirit. You are pure presence. Your job is not to figure out, right? Like I'm not sitting here like looking at these plants or these flowers or a painting and be like, I'm gonna think about why that's green and the photosynthesis involved behind it and da da da. I'm just gonna be like, that's beautiful. I'd much rather live in that existence than in the mind, right? Because we live so much in our minds and we depend so much in our minds, we live in that bustly place. So when we choose that coping mechanism, we choose to let it in, like you said, in the life activation, we bring that spirit in, because that's truly who we are. And it's like, to sit here and try to describe what it's like to receiving a life activation. And I can speak to this because I was atheist before coming to the school, and actually even took me many years on the path to personally reconcile my experience, my relationship with God. I had completely denied all spirituality and religious and God and all of that, and yet still said yes to this work. Thank God, literally, thank God. But it's like I couldn't, even on the path for all those years and learning teachings about Jesus and God and archangels and Kuan Yin and all of these amazing beings. And I was like, yeah, cool, great, nice story. It's a nice
Yeah.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
nice guy, did some nice things. Yeah, seems like he kind of got that whole love thing on lock.
too.
Great. Doesn't apply to me. But it wasn't until it was actually through the process of the Universal Hermetic Ray Kabbalah program that I was able to and it wasn't, it was just on my knees in the woods, bawling my eyes out, recognizing how much I had hurt myself through the course of my life, through the decisions that I had made, through shutting out spirit, God, Jesus, universe, whatever, through shutting out energy and denying the existence of energy, was denying myself.
Yeah.
forget everything else. It was me. I was denying myself love. I was denying myself freedom, myself joy, myself everything that is good and beautiful in this world, simply because I chose not to embrace spirit. And it wasn't until having that experience by myself at night in the dark, on my knees in the woods, at the culmination, at the final retreat of that universal hermetic Kabbalah program and all the alchemy that had gone through over the course of those 10 months, to finally bring myself to this sort of breaking point of accepting that there was far more energy and beauty and glory and victory to be had in the world than I had allowed myself to believe. So yes, breaking those programmings, breaking those belief systems feels like a death, and it is. But the flip side of that coin is, it's like that Anise, I forget her name exactly, quote, where it's like the point comes where staying tight in that bud becomes more painful and that's when, you talk about the choice that people have to make in order to receive, whether it's life activation or empower their self-initiation, whatever that next step is. There has to be a choice of, I'm willing to let go of what maybe I'm not even aware of. Maybe I don't even know what it is I'm letting go of. Or maybe you do. Maybe you do know. You're like, yeah, I don't want to believe this thing about myself, about money, about love, about whatever it is. I don't want to believe this anymore. I don't want this to be a thread in my fabric of reality. I'm done. I'm done with this. And you know what that is? Maybe you don't know. Maybe you just know that there's something more. And if there's a potential that it's behind life activation door number 1, I'm going to take life activation door number 1. If it's not, I'm taking it because I've tried the other doors and they didn't do what I wanted it to do. But I'm not willing to give up hope yet. So, and the beauty of the sacrifice of that limiting belief and having the hope or faith that you are greater than it. You're greater than it. And the gifts that are just waiting to be bestowed upon you, the beauty that lives inside you, the light that lives inside you, the opportunity and the beauty and the glory that this world has to offer is all right there. You just have to put this down.
Yeah.
Just put it down. Put it down. You don't need it. Let it go. Let something else come in. And after enough times of doing that, I've gotten far enough on the path, like I said, where I get to a point of gratitude, where I might be having a challenge come up, or I have something come up and I'm like, I literally don't know how I'm going to do this. Or I literally don't know, like if I let this go, I don't know who I am without this thing. But I know that this thing isn't me. So there has to be something greater, and then can be in gratitude, like, oh my goodness, thank you. Thank you for showing me through this pain and trial that this isn't me. This isn't it. This isn't in alignment, so that I can let it go. And it can be terrifying what comes after, or I can be excited of like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get bigger. I'm going to have more joy now. I'm going to have more freedom now. What I want is going to be closer to me now because I've let go of this thing that isn't serving me. And that's, to bring it back to Buddhism, the longer that we hold on to this thing, that's suffering. That's attachment. That's suffering. And we can let go of that. And life activation will give you a glimpse of that hope. And again, I could sit here and talk about life activation, and it's like trying to describe the color orange, or trying to describe to someone who's never swam in the ocean what it's like to swim in the ocean. Like I can't really describe to you, but what I can do is remind you from a place of authenticity, because I've walked the path for a decade, is that you really, like, there really is so much more. There
Yeah.
really is so much more. It is safe for you to drop the stuff. It's safe for you to do that. And I very rarely use this words, but I can promise you that if you drop the stuff, there's something greater on the other side. And no one can do it but you. You're the only one that can choose to do it. But if and when you're ready, I have this really great thing called life activation that'll make the process a lot more graceful, a
Yeah.
lot easier, and a lot quicker. So you don't have to stay in limbo place. So you just let me know.
You just let me know. Yeah.
Just let me know. I'll be here.
Yeah. I literally used almost the exact same language of someone who was interested in this work. And I said, if you want an easier way, like there is an easier way available. And it doesn't mean that it's not painful, that it's not scary, that it's not like challenging to you, but it can be easier. And and I think part of it is really choosing to love ourselves enough and to feel worthy of not struggling quite so much and saying, I don't need to struggle. I don't need to be in pain. I am worthy and I'm ready to receive something greater in my life. And it's really, someone pays money for this session, and yet it is such a gift to themselves. And whenever someone chooses to do a life activation, I feel this immense celebration on their behalf, because I know that they're not choosing me. They're not choosing this lineage. They're choosing themselves. They're choosing to step in and to receive this higher potential for joy and expression and ease in their life. And as you said, no one can choose them that for them. They have to choose it themselves. And it is such a great gift that someone can give to themselves.
It's really, I would say it's the best gift that anybody could do for themselves, to come home to themselves, to the higher dimension, higher awareness, and allow that spirit to come in and really inhabit who and what they are, so that they can experience life and really live life alive, and not live life from a place of being a slave to your mind and to your emotions, which is where most people are, is they're not in control of their mind and their emotions, and then therefore they're not in control of their life. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. And when we welcome spirit in and recognize that we are spiritual beings, and allow that in, is when we can have a greater life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with me, Madison. What a
You're
joy.
so welcome. Oh my gosh, I've enjoyed this so much. I feel butterflies in my heart now.
Yes. So just in case anyone is here and they don't know, who you are, where you're based, Madison, tell us where you are and how people can be in touch with you, and I'll do the same.
Yes. So I am just north of Boston, in Woburn, in the greater Boston area. You can find my website at thelightcenterboston.com. I'm also on Instagram, _light center. And you can come here to my center and receive a session or take a class. And I would be more than honored to assist you on your path of spiritual self-mastery.
Amazing. Amazing. And I am based in New York City as of now. I work out of Manhattan. You can find me on Instagram or at my website. They're both basically the same. It's my full name. So my website, www.lindsayderrickhunt.com. And my Instagram is my full name, @LindsayDerrickHunt. And yeah, it would be such an honor to work with you and to support you. So thank you so much for joining me, Madison. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.